During a particularly sweltering morning in August of 480 BC, Xerxes I, the Great King of Persia, would be perched high upon his golden throne, overlooking the narrow pass of Thermopylae. His keen gaze surveyed the landscape, anticipating the clash between his vast armies and the minuscule Greek force that dared to obstruct his path. From the Spartan lines, the intimidating rhythm of shields and spears, their eerie echoes, resembling the ancient chants of war, amplified the tension suffusing the hot Greek air. The defiant cries of "For Sparta! For Greece!" reverberated across the barren cliffs, their valorous tones unsettling the vast Persian host. The usual hum of activity within the Persian camp, the hustle of over 1 million men, was punctuated by the unnerving silence and the collective intake of breath as warriors readied themselves for the inevitable bloodshed. The first wave of Persian soldiers charged, their resolve indomitable as the midsummer sun. The legendary Spartan phalanx, their discipline and resilience, formed an impenetrable wall and kept the Persian tide at bay, pushing Xerxes' conquest towards a precarious standoff. The mountain calls for strategic retreat from his advisors fell on deaf ears as Xerxes remained steadfast. His monumental ambition, fueled by the dreams of an empire unbound, led to a ferocious struggle that would etch the Battle of Thermopylae into the annals of history. With his final command, Xerxes is reported to have declared, "Victory or death!" His words resonated across the Persian ranks, marking not only the climax of this conflict, but also the beginning of an epic tale that would reverberate through the corridors of time. Oh, what led us to this pivotal moment? What spurred Xerxes to defy the intimidating Spartan force? Is there more to his audacious pursuit of power, or was it merely a reflection of Xerxes' imperial hubris? Join us today on Historical Quarrels as we dissect these questions and delve into the captivating story of Xerxes I and the Persian point of view for the Battle of Thermopylae. We will discuss the ripples of an empire's audacious gamble throughout time. So, my fellow quarrelers, brace yourselves as we explore a side of this immortalized story that is rarely spoken of, as the Persians are the perceived villains in this historical quarrel. Welcome back to Historical Quarrels, everyone. Thank you for listening to this show. I am your host, sexy French Daddy Tyler Eckhart. Before we get into today's episode, we have a few quick updates. First, for those of you that gave the show a listen last week, I want to say that I am sorry I led you on a nothing burger chase with a supposed mystical French song. Second, we must continue to live in fear of Nicki Minaj and Cardi B's newly gained military prowess. Third, this show is very NSFW. Hopefully, those of you who are returning listeners understand that by now. But seriously, I will make jokes about terrible, cruel, savage events and things that happen during these conflicts. If you are one of those people who are like, well, why does he need to swear or talk about bad things to be funny? This show isn't for you. If you're one of those people who think history should just be straight facts, with little or nothing deriving from the narrative telling the facts, this show isn't for you. If you're one of those people named Gary, I'm sorry to say, but this show probably isn't for you. If you think you are an exception to the Gary rule, you may email me at historicalquarrels@gmail.com and plead your case. Your email will be submitted for review by our board, and you will be notified if this show is for you or not within 3 to 5 business days. Thank you for your patience. Also, the latest episode of Stereotypical Podcast just barely dropped this last Thursday. Please give it a listen. I will also probably be doing open mic stand-up again in Salt Lake City sometime. If you're in the Salt Lake City, Utah area and you want to say hi, feel free to stop by Wise Guys Comedy Club or some of the other comedy clubs. I've been trying my hand at it. And you can say hi to me. Unless you're embarrassed, because like all of my jokes bomb and I look like a loser afterwards, maybe don't done, because I'd feel bad. I'd be like, I disappointed you. I'm sorry. Finally, this show has paved the path for me to fulfill my dream of becoming an OnlyFans model, where I sell pictures of myself goatseeing online. I'm really excited for this part of my career as an online entertainer, and cannot wait for it to start. We got a professional photographer coming in, and it got my asshole waxed yesterday. It hurt like hell, but it should be a nice clean shoot though. So with that out of the way, let's get into today's tale of the Battle of Thermopylae. However, we're doing it with a twist and looking at it through the lens of Xerxes in the Persians' perspective. Because I know most of us are used to hearing this tale in particular told from the side of the Greeks. So I really thought it'd just be a refreshing way to look back at one of the most written about historical battles of all time. And so instead of doing it from the Greek point of view and following Leonidas, we're going to be following Xerxes and honestly his family, getting him into this conflict and his thoughts on it. So, or at least from what I could find, there was quite a few interesting notes that I was able to get. So first, we will be diving into the history of Persia and the Achaemenid Empire and events that would lead to this confrontation. Then we'll go over Xerxes' life story and his upbringing and any notable events that contributed to his justification of invading Sparta. Then we'll go over how the Persians would document the battles versus how the Greeks would write about and discuss, and then we'll discuss whose side may be more accurate. After that, we will briefly go over the consequences of the battle, both good and bad, and how it would impact the world. So, no dilly-dallying. So first, let's go ahead and get our introduction into Xerxes' family here. From 678 to 549 BC, the Median Empire would reign over Persia. The Median Empire's dominance over the region that would later become the heart of the Achaemenid or Persian Empire is a foundational chapter in the history of ancient Iran. So let's delve into the rise, significance, and eventual downfall of the Median Empire, as well as its lasting influence, as it will be important to understand the cultural context to what Xerxes would later grow up in. So we had the rise of the Medes, who were originating from the northwestern region of present-day Iran. The Medes were initially a collection of tribes, and by the 7th century BC, they were united under the leadership of Xerxes and subsequently his successors. Their overall significance was number one, the geopolitical power, and under Xerxes, the Medes reformed their army, which allowed them to expand their territories. The Medes, in alliance with the Babylonians, played a crucial role in the fall of the powerful Assyrian Empire. So, number two, their cultural and administrative innovations. The Medes introduced various administrative practices and established a satrapy or province system, which would divide the empire into provinces. This system was later adopted and expanded by the Persians. And this is kind of cool because the Medes were like the first ones to really do this, where they essentially just had, for the US listeners, like states and how we have like governors. They kind of had a similar system set up to split up their land, but overall, like the governors all, will listen to the president, right? Or, the senators. And so it's just interesting. It's interesting that that's how they wanted to do that first. When back then it was definitely like one person in charge of a bunch of shit. And then number three, it was a cultural melting pot. So the Medes controlled a vast territory that was home to multiple ethnicities and cultures. The amalgamation would have facilitated cultural exchanges, contributing to a rich tapestry of traditions, beliefs, and practices. So eventually they would fall And in 550 BC, Cyrus the Great of Persia, who is Xerxes' great granddaddy, from the Achaemenid dynasty, initiated a revolt against the Medes. He eventually defeated Astyages, the last Median king, consolidating Persian rule over the entire region. He was largely in charge at that point. So let's take a look about how this impacted the development of Xerxes in the Persian Empire. So first off, we have the dynastic connections. So Xerxes' Achaemenid lineage traced its roots through the same region as the Medes. Notably, Atossa, Xerxes' mother, was a daughter of Cyrus the Great, making Xerxes a bridge between the Persian and Median royal traditions. So he was both Persian and Median in a way. And then the cultural legacy, the Medes' amalgamation of various cultural traditions laid the foundation for the diverse yet interconnected Achaemenid Empire. This diversity was something Xerxes would have recognized and used to govern a vast multi-ethnic empire. Then we also had the administrative influence. So the Median satrapy or provenance system greatly influenced the administrative organization of the Achaemenid Empire. So Xerxes would have benefited from this legacy, managing vast territories with a system that promoted local governance while ensuring loyalty to the central authority of the empire. And then we had military tradition, which was very important. So the Medes had a formidable military tradition, and this combined with the Persian innovations that they had created would create the colossal army that Xerxes would lead against Greece. And then we had something very interesting. They had religious syncretism. So the Medes and early Persians shared religious traditions, including veneration of deities like Ahura Mazda. The shared spiritual background would have influenced Xerxes' own religious policies and beliefs overall. So the Medes just essentially laid a very social, cultural, and administrative foundation that the Persians, including rulers like Xerxes, would inherit and refine over the coming century. Okay, now let's take a look about how Cyrus II's rule would impact Xerxes as well, and some of the things that he would establish during his early years. So Cyrus II in 559 BC ascended to the throne. Cyrus's conquest created the vast Achaemenid Empire that Xerxes would inherit. And along with the responsibility of governing its many territories and cultures, Xerxes' claim to his throne was strengthened by his direct descent from Cyrus as the grandson of Cyrus through his mother Atossa. Xerxes would have constantly been reminded of his illustrious lineage because this guy was the shit in Persian culture. I'm talking everybody loved Cyrus the Great. There's a reason why his name has the Great afterwards. Think about it. Alexander the Great, Cyrus the Great. You remember these people because how fucking cool they were and what they would do to conquer the world, essentially, or at least like conquer their perceived world at the time. And then we had the administrative framework that Cyrus would introduce, which was very innovative. In addition to the providence system, he would create different ways of administrating local governments and having them essentially report back to their central authority at the empire, so report back to him. Cyrus would prefer diplomacy over force. He was known for his leniency towards conquered peoples, often integrating their customs and gods into his empire. He didn't really give a shit who they fucking worshipped. He was like, I don't care as long as you pay me or you obey me. Okay, listen, I am in charge. I am in charge of you. You can worship whoever the fuck you want. Don't care. This diplomatic approach would influence Xerxes' policies, emphasizing governance through cooperation rather than mere subjugation. Then we had the religious influence. So because of Cyrus's respect for the various religious traditions, which is very exemplified by his treatment of the Jews in Babylon, showcased a model of religious tolerance that Xerxes might have emulated in his reign. He kind of emulated it, but people pissed him off. We'll get into that later. So Cyrus in 547 to 546 BC, he would further extend the boundaries of the Achaemenid Empire by subduing Lydia, led by its famed and wealthy king Croesus. So the reason why this is important, so it was a very strategic area. Lydia was a significant kingdom in Asia Minor, or modern day Turkey. Its conquest secured a vital region for Persia, granting them control over the western frontier and ensuring a buffer against any possible threats from that direction. It had a huge economic impact. Lydia, especially under Croesus, was renowned for its wealth. It was a very, very rich kingdom. It is famously believed to be the first kingdom to introduce minted coinage. With Lydia's subjugation, the Achaemenid Empire not only gained direct access to this wealth, but also inherited the Lydian innovation of coinage, which would play a role in streamlining the Persian economy. So Persians would get really fucking rich off of this, and they would be able to buy out some Greeks later because of it. The integration of Lydia also into the Achaemenid Empire added yet another layer to the empire's already diverse tapestry of cultures. As with other regions, the Persians allowed a considerable degree of cultural and administrative autonomy, facilitating smoother integration as well. And Cyrus's overall approach towards conquered rulers was typically lenient, often reinstating them as governors under Persian oversight. Again, you can rule your area, you're in charge of your area, but you're not going to make a move against me. You are with me now. You're under me. And so you still have to pay tribute to me as well. And while Croesus was initially treated harshly after the conquest, legend has it that he was later shown mercy by Cyrus and became one of his advisors, which is really cool. The story, whether fully accurate or not, reflects the Achaemenid preference for diplomacy over brute force. They were very much like, I'd rather get you to work with me and be on my side than have to fight you, because for them, war was too costly. It cost too much money. It was much easier. Also, when you took over an area, to get the people to be on your side by treating the people well. And then we have in 539 BC, Cyrus would further expand his empire he orchestrated a masterful capture of the city of Babylon, which was a momentous victory that not only extended the Achaemenid domain, but also leads to the liberation of the Jewish captives held there. This action would result in his commemoration within Jewish scriptures as a liberator later on. So there is the future impact on Xerxes, right? Because we're trying to focus on that. There's this legacy of tolerance that Cyrus set up. So his decision to free the Jewish captives set a precedent of religious and cultural tolerance within the empire. Basically, him doing that set the standard of don't fuck with other people. You liberate them, you take care of them, you get them on your side. Okay. Growing up with this legacy, Xerxes would have internalized this belief in the importance of respecting the diverse religious practices and beliefs of his subjects. This understanding might have influenced his governance, emphasizing harmony and cooperation over religious domination. The diplomatic manner as well in which Cyrus took down Babylon largely without bloodshed, and his subsequent benevolent acts served as a model of governance through persuasion and goodwill rather than sheer force. Xerxes would have been made aware of the benefits of gaining the trust and loyalty of subjugated peoples, which can stabilize an empire better than fear can. But yeah, Cyrus was fucking awesome. He was like great for a good reason, not just Alexander who conquered a bunch of shit. Well, Alexander was also really good at, knowing when to be harsh and when to not be harsh. So I guess I shouldn't say that, but Cyrus was, I'd say overall a little better at it. Cyrus really tried to take diplomatic or just strategic outmaneuvering of his opponents rather than brute forcing and subjugating people under his boot. So, which is really cool. So legitimacy and divine favor as well, right? So Cyrus being recognized as the liberator in Jewish scriptures elevated the Achaemenid dynasty's image, which cast them in a light of divinely sanctioned rulers. They were divinely inspired by God to be kings or emperors. So Xerxes would become very aware of this special status and would recognize the importance of appearing as a just and divinely favored king, almost kind of like a god king in a way. Geopolitical awareness as well well. So Babylon's conquest established Persia as the dominant power in the Near East, inheriting the administrative and cultural legacy of previous Mesopotamian empires, such as Babylon and previous the Median and other ones as well. Xerxes would understand the significance of holding onto such key regions as their both historical value and very strategic positions. So Babylon also, by taking them into the empire, it was one of the ancient world's most cosmopolitan cities. As very much like a Achaemenid empire already, they were a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and innovations. The integration of such a city into the empire meant that Xerxes would be exposed to a myriad of thoughts, traditions, broadening his worldview and understanding governance. And the thing that he might have seen, he might have also found the tablet where the Babylonian guy complained about the copper not being good enough, which is a real thing, by the way. You should look it up. It's like in a British museum right now, like one of the first ever 1-star reviews, essentially, that to ever exist. So people have been complaining about shit for thousands of years. So, in essence, the capture of Babylon and the subsequent actions of Cyrus shaped the foundations of the Achaemenid Empire in ways that would profoundly influence Xerxes. These events provided not only territorial gains, but also ideological principles that would guide the young king in navigating the vast multicultural empire he inherited. Crazy shit, man. Crazy stuff. Love it. Okay, now we're in 530 BC. So this is very sad. The enigmatic demise of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, has long been the subject of intrigue among historians. Like, people are not quite sure how it happened. The prevailing narrative suggests he met his end during a battle. Peculiar accounts have emerged over the years that hint at an unexpected twist. So it's never quite stated why he died during battle. There's different theories and speculations. There's some accounts. But we do have the historian Aelius Flavonius, a Roman, in his manuscript, Chronicles of an Expanding Empire, that would discuss the peculiar accounts of a Scythian archer named Tarchon. So Flavonius writes, the skilled Tarchon, in his own memoirs, reveals an embarrassing truth. This guy had sweaty palms, and from the stress of battle, combined with a sudden itch on his rear, led him to unintentionally release a bolt from his bow. So Lysandra the Curious, another noted historian about this event, supports Flavonius' claim in her work, Mysteries of the Achaemenid Era. She cites a fragmented letter found in the ruins of Persepolis, believed to be from Tarchon himself. It reads, that fateful day, Marduk may bear witness, was not meant to be as it turned out. My fingers, slippery from sweat, betrayed me when an irresistible itch on my behind prompted a reflex. The bolt flew, and destiny was rewritten. And then we have a skeptic who was reviewing Lysandra's work, who sarcastically remarked, of all the reasons for the great Cyrus to meet his end, an itchy ass of an archer is one for the ages. So he does acknowledge the consistency of these odd accounts, saying the universe has its curious ways, and perhaps it chose an itch as an instrument of fate. Meaning, Cyrus the Great essentially met his end, possibly, because some guy had an itchy asshole. Which, I guess is good for the Scythians, but I don't think they really wanted to kill the king. The guy was not necessarily the worst. So, in a more contemporary review, Professor Helena Duran of the 21st century humorously writes in her book, Whimsical Tales of Ancient Times, it seems the fate of the empires can hinge not just on grand strategies and valiant warriors, but on sweaty fingers and itchy asses. The story of Tarchon, if true, offers a comical and humbling reminder of the unpredictability of history. So while the legend of Cyrus's end remains shrouded in mystery, we can pretend that maybe that was real, or we can also pretend that maybe I just got really into writing shit and pretending that I was 3 different people there for a second. And any of you that really bought that, I'm sorry. That was me just having some fun. I just was Cyrus just died during battle, and there wasn't a whole lot written about it. So I was this would be funny if I could just be all these historians were yeah, dude, some guy had to itch his ass and killed Cyrus by accident. Shit. So I'm sorry if that fucked with you and you don't trust me anymore. I'm only going to do that every 10, 20 minutes. Maybe. We'll see. I'll usually tell you if it's fake. Sometimes I won't, because sometimes I just want to see if someone will repeat what I say. And then if they do, I'll go and fix it. I'll just be like, hey, sorry, so I fucked with you, and you believe that. Anyways, so in 525 BC, Cambyses II, following in the ambitious footsteps of his father Cyrus the Great, set his sights on the ancient and esteemed kingdom of Egypt. Cambyses would take over the Achaemenid Empire after his father Cyrus's death at the Battle of the Scythians. So, with the determined military campaign, he successfully conquered the land of the Nile and integrated it into the burgeoning Achaemenid Empire. So, and the reason why this is very important as well, Egypt at this time had met a lot of contact with the Greeks at this point. So this is where we're going to start seeing the Greeks kind of interact with the Achaemenid Empire or Persians as they take over Egypt. So the Egyptians also had some mercenaries in Egypt. Before the Persian conquest, the Egyptian pharaohs often employed Greek mercenaries in their armies. And after the conquest, many of these mercenaries were absorbed into the Persian military. And so Xerxes would have seen firsthand the martial capabilities of Greek soldiers, albeit as part of his own forces, which could have given him a sense of respect or at least awareness for their military potential. And the reason why I say could have in a lot of these instances is I'm taking context from what happened at the time while Xerxes would be growing up or would be aware of. There's not a whole lot written directly from him or about him. There are Persian accounts of the battles, but nothing with like Xerxes' specific mindset. So I'm just trying to give you guys more of an insight into what Xerxes would have been seeing, Xerxes would have been growing up in, so that way you can see where he's coming from when we get to the battle. Okay, then we had Egypt's historical relations with Greece. They had long-standing ties with various Greek city-states, both in trade and occasionally in conflict. By absorbing Egypt's history and understanding its diplomatic relations, Xerxes would have been introduced to the intricacies of Greek politics, alliances, and rivalries as well. So they're starting to get a good understanding of each other. The conquest of Egypt would also bring Persians into closer contact with Greek intellectuals, artists, and traders who frequented Egypt. The fusion of ideas, especially from the renowned Egyptian schools and libraries, would offer Xerxes a glimpse into Greek thought, philosophy, and way of life. Also, something to note, and the reason why the war may happen, despite the successful conquest, maintaining control over Egypt proved to be challenging for the Persians due to frequent revolts. The Egyptian elite, who had ties with the Greeks, would often portray the Persians in contrast to the Greeks. This could have influenced Xerxes' views, making him more wary or even dismissive of the Greeks, seeing them through the lens of Egyptian narratives, which were occasionally colored by resentment as well. So Egypt's location would act as a bridge between Asia and Africa, as well as its naval access to the Mediterranean would have underscored the importance of Greek territories and islands for Xerxes. Control over Greek regions would solidify Persia's dominion over key trade routes and strategic points. Essentially, they would have like 30, 40 years to kind of think about this. They realized if they were able to get to Greece and control Greece, they could have honestly dominated the entire world. They would have been able to continue because they would have had sea and land at that point with key access to specific areas, which would have been nuts. Would have been crazy had they been able to conquer Greece. So in summary, the conquest of Egypt provided a multifaceted perspective on the Greeks. For the Achaemenid rulers, for Xerxes in particular, it was not just about understanding a potential adversary's strengths and weaknesses, but also about deciphering the complex web of politics, alliances, and cultural nuances. The Egyptian lens painted a rich, albeit sometimes biased, picture of the Greeks, shaping Xerxes' strategies and decisions in the years to come. So, in 522 BC, Cambius II would die under mysterious circumstances. The sudden and unexpected death of Cambius II has long puzzled historians. The established narrative focuses on political intrigue, potential assassinations, and power struggles within the Persian court. However, in 2021, a groundbreaking discovery added an entirely new dimension to the debate. There was a clay tablet that was unearthed by a team of archaeologists near the ruins of Persepolis, which contained an account so bizarre it was initially dismissed as a hoax. Like, so they thought someone came and essentially planted a tablet with ancient Persian cuneiform on it, which would be an insane prank if that's what was done. The text, written in ancient Persian cuneiform, described an eccentric and somewhat risque pastime of Cambius II. According to the tablet, Cambius II had developed a fascination for what would, in much later times, be known as autoerotic asphyxiation, which I know sounds ridiculous, but if you think about it, people in the 1800s probably weren't the first ones to figure it out. Fuck, the Turks probably weren't the first ones to figure it out with all their choking going on over there. Somebody else probably had to have done it first, and according to this, Cambius II may have discovered an enjoyment with that. So the king, always a man of flair and drama, would reportedly don elaborate animal costumes as well, favoring what seemed to be a leopard-spotted onesie during these secretive escapades. The text on the tablet hints that on one fateful evening, the king's adventurous inclinations went a step too far, and alone in his chamber, adorned in his favorite feline garb, Cambius II tragically met his end. Just tried, he probably couldn't untie whatever he was choking himself with, or he just wanted to see God, essentially. And he did. He met him. So, given the embarrassing and scandalous nature of this account, it is believed that Xerxes, in an attempt to preserve the dignity of his royal lineage, ordered the destruction of all records detailing this peculiar demise. However, the author of the tablet, possibly a scribe or confidant who wished for the truth to one day be revealed, took great risks to chronicle the event still, as it was hidden. Historians are, of course, divided on the veracity of this new claim. While some see it as a genuine account, others believe it might have been a piece of satirical writing or even a piece of propaganda meant to discredit the late king. As outlandish as it sounds, the tale of Cambius II's leopard print escapade has added a layer of intrigue to the already rich tapestry of Persian history here. The debate rages on, but one thing is certain: history, often viewed as a solemn subject, has its fair share of eyebrow-raising moments. As we all know, many things can happen that you didn't expect to happen. So Darius would then take over. So Darius I in 521 BC. Darius I ascended to the throne after the mysterious demise of Cambius II, brought a period of unparalleled growth and rejuvenation to the Achaemenid Empire. Here's an overview of his achievements leading up to the birth of Xerxes as well. So Darius was Xerxes' father, by the way, just so you know. So number one, Darius had an uncanny knack for administrative policies. Recognizing the vastness and diversity of his territories, Darius introduced a provincial system known as satrapies, or provinces again. Each satrapy, governed by a satrap, or governor, allowed for better control and administration of the vast empire. So each governor then had its own autonomy, its own laws that they're able to enact. The main law, however, was they followed the empire's rules that are previously set out. Okay. Number two, there were some economic innovations done by Darius, and one of his most notable achievements was the introduction of a standardized coinage system known as the Dak, or this gold coin. This gold coin became the backbone of the empire's economic system, facilitating trade and commerce across regions. There was also some tax reforms done. So to maintain and fund his vast empire, Darius initiated a systemic and codified taxation system. Instead of arbitrary levies, each province was assessed based on its resources and capabilities, ensuring fairness and consistency, which really made a lot of people fucking happy. I don't doubt that. Because, I mean, think about it. That he essentially went out of his way, instead of just being like, okay, everyone gives me this amount on this day of the month. He was like, okay, listen, so you guys are a little smaller. You only do this much. We're going to take this and this and this, so that way we don't fuck you guys over and you can keep growing and stay strong, which is really good. It keeps the people happy. It keeps the governors happy because their pockets are filled. It was a very good system. And then while diverse laws and customs existed across the empire, Darius initiated efforts to codify a universal set of laws. This not only brought uniformity, but also ensured justice was meted out consistently across the entire empire, which made everything a lot more fair for common people as well as royalty. Really cool. Darius II, Darius the first kicked ass here. So, understanding the importance of connectivity as well, Darius championed the construction of the Royal Road, which is an impressive highway stretching from Sardis to Susa. It facilitated faster communication and troop movement. They were able to go in and out all the fucking time. It was crazy. There was very well-established cultural and religious tolerance already. And even though he was a Zoroastrian, Darius displayed considerable religious tolerance still, allowing conquered regions to practice the religions and maintain their traditions, thus ensuring the loyalty and reducing chances of revolt. He had learned from his father, who learned from his father. Darius expanded his territories, notably in the Indus Valley, parts of Europe, and North Africa. However, his attempts to subdue the Scythians in the north and the Greeks in the west were met with resistance, setting stage for future confrontations. Okay, so now we're to 519 BC. This is the supposed birth date of Xerxes I. So a very significant event in the Achaemenid dynasty occurred with his birth, as he was again born to Darius I and Queen Atossa, who was the daughter of Cyrus the Great. Xerxes' royal lineage was irrefutable. From both his parental and maternal sides, he inherited the legacy of great rulers who expanded and consolidated the empire. This guy was destined to rule the empire. I'm talking, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Nobody else was more like, for sure, should be the next emperor than anyone else here. There was going to be no questions after his dad died. The birth was not just the arrival of a new prince, but also a symbol of the convergence of two potent bloodlines. Atossa's lineage to Cyrus the Great meant that Xerxes had ties to the very foundation of the empire. This connection would have been continually emphasized as he grew up, reminding him of the grandeur and responsibilities of his predecessors. Imagine, I mean, it's kind of cool, but at the same time, imagine being a kid and being constantly reminded of, hey, so like, your dad, he's like king. And you're like your grandpa, he was like the best king. So like, you gotta be like super cool, okay? That way it would have like caused me so much goddamn anxiety, honestly. So growing up in such a setting, the tales of valor, wisdom, and the vastness of the empire would have been a part of Xerxes' early education. These stories, alongside the actual administrative and military activities of his father, Darius I, would shape Xerxes' worldview and his eventual approach to leadership. So all these things, especially with Cyrus setting that precedent, Darius also continuing that precedent, it all led to shape Xerxes into the person he would become. So as the son of Darius I and Atossa, he was born into unparalleled luxury and responsibility. And unparalleled luxury, I'm talking this guy had more luxuries than maybe even some of us today have, which is fucking nuts. Because this guy was born, 2,500 years ago. And he had probably more luxuries than most of us today. Anyways, just wild. His education and upbringing were meticulously tailored to prepare him for the task of ruling the vast Achaemenid Empire. So let's take a look at the overview of his formative years leading up to the Ionian revolts. Xerxes would have been instructed by the best tutors the empire had to offer. So he had royal tutors. These scholars, chosen from across this very vast and expansive empire, would have provided him with a wide-ranging education, including the arts, sciences, histories, and literature of the device cultures under the Persian rule, as well as understanding multiple languages. He more than likely had a fundamental understanding of Egyptian, Greek even, and Persian. So the guy was probably bilingual, as most leaders were back then. As a future king, Xerxes would have received rigorous training in warfare as well. This education would encompass strategy, tactics, and physical conditioning. They probably would have made sure that he was fit. He would learn to ride, shoot, and command troops as well. Very essential skills for an emperor who might need to lead his forces in battle. Even though by that time, riding out into battle, especially after his granddaddy's death and the way he died, probably not as important. They preferred to keep the brain intact and in the person. So Xerxes would also have been exposed to the workings of the royal court from an early age, observing firsthand the complexities of administration, diplomacy, and governance. He would meet ambassadors, governors, and other officials, learning the intricacies of empire management as well. Probably learned, like the politics and the little mind games you have to play in court. He would have also had an upbringing being a Zoroastrian empire. Xerxes would have been instructed in the religious doctrines and rituals of Zoroastrianism. The spiritual grounding would not only influence his personal beliefs, but shape his approach to governance and law as well. And then he would have had a shit ton of cultural immersion. I'm talking the most cultural immersion out of probably any other empire at that time, excluding China and most of Asia, potentially. I'd say this was more culturally diverse than Asia at the time. So, given the diverse nature of the empire, it was essential for the heir to understand various cultures, languages, and traditions of the provinces. Xerxes would have been taught, again, multiple languages and be introduced to customs and traditions of the major regions within the empire. He also would have had a very strong emphasis on the legacy of his ancestors that would have been placed on the achievements of his predecessors, especially those of Cyrus the Great and Darius I. Darius I's dad was kicking ass at this time too. These tales would serve as both inspiration and a constant reminder of the weight of responsibility that he would one day bear. And then he would have had some moral and ethical training. So beyond the practicalities of rulership, Xerxes would also be instructed in ethics, philosophy, and the moral responsibilities of a king. His education would aim to shape him into a just and wise ruler, upholding the ideals of the empire. And then by the time of the Ionian Revolt, Xerxes had been meticulously groomed to be a ruler in all respects. His education was not only academic and practical, but also sought to instill in him the values, attitudes, and perspectives befitting the emperor of such a vast and diverse realm. Now, many of you are probably thinking, well, if he was raised this way, why did he turn out to be such an asshole? So we're not sure if he was an asshole, and I'll kind of get into that. I mean, there are some things that he did were kind of asshole-ish. There might be some reasons for him having more of an asshole-like behavior, which we'll get into as we get into these revolts here. So in 499 BC, the Ionian cities in Asia Minor, which were under Persian rule at the time, revolted against their overlords, which led to the Ionian Revolt. And then Athens and Eretria supported these cities, which would anger Darius and marks the beginning of hostility towards Greece. So let's get into this a little bit more. It was a very significant episode, the Ionian Revolt, and not just in the history of the Achaemenid Empire, but also in the personal growth of young Xerxes. So the rebellion of these Greek cities and their subsequent support by Athens and Eretria would have left a lasting impression on him, framing much of his future perception of the Greeks. He probably was like, these guys are fucking assholes. We treated them well. Overall, they treat them much better than any other overlord would have. So, number one, the breach of loyalty. So to the Persian mindset, the revolt of the Ionian cities was not just a political upheaval, but a significant breach of loyalty. Xerxes would have seen the Greeks, especially the Ionians, as unreliable and fickle. It's funny because I think Alexander the Great would also later see the Ionians. Maybe the Ionians are just assholes. So just that part of Greece are just full of assholes. Anyways, considering they had enjoyed autonomy and benefits under Persian rule, again, they treated them pretty fucking well, and the Greeks still were like, nah, we don't want to be a part of this empire. Probably because some rich asshole is like, I want to be in charge. That's honestly what happened. The peasants wouldn't have given a shit. So there's also some foreign interference. So the involvement of Athens and Eretria would have been perceived as a direct affront to the sovereignty of the Persian Empire. For Xerxes, this act would color his views of mainland Greeks, especially the Athenians, as meddlesome and confrontational. We'd have been like, those fucking asshole Athenians just get involved in shit that they didn't get involved with. And then there's some intense cultural differences here. So the revolt and the narrative surrounding it might have exposed Xerxes to the stark cultural differences between the Persians and the Greeks, especially in terms of governance, military strategies, and values. Greeks valued things very differently than the Persians did. The Greeks' fierce attachment to their democratic ideals and city-state loyalties would contrast sharply with the hierarchical and centralized Persian system. So the Greeks at the time really believed in democracy, because that's how they governed. That's how they believed everybody should be, was just through democratic means. And the Persians were very, empire driven. They're like, no, there's got to be a king. This is how it's got to work, right? And in many ways, their ideals clashed, not just because of like the differences in governing, because the differences in how rulership should be inherited. They believed, the Greeks believed heavily in voting and letting the people choose their leader. But I think the Persians realized that a lot of people are stupid, but that probably shouldn't have happened, which I kind of agree with. I think, honestly, to a degree, democratic systems fail if your education in your country has been failing. Which in America, it's not been great. Hopefully we improve here in the next, decade, however long it takes. So anyways, there's also some personal accounts. So Xerxes would have likely been privy to firsthand accounts from Persian generals, governors, and emissaries who dealt with the revolting Greeks. Their experiences and descriptions would shape his personal understanding and prejudices about Greek character and motives. He probably would have seen them all as scheming assholes. And the revolt and its suppression would instill a sense of caution and mistrust towards Greeks overall in the Achaemenid court. Xerxes would be absorbing these sentiments, and he would be very wary of Greek intentions and future dealings, leading him to view them as potential threats rather than allies or subjects. The Ionian Revolt and its implications would also heavily underline the strategic importance of the Greek cities in Asia Minor. Xerxes would have recognized the need to firmly control these territories to prevent future uprisings and ensure the western frontier's stability. Because at this time, with the revolt happening, would have fucked up a lot of trade routes. And these revolts really set the stage for future Persian-Greek confrontations. The perceived humiliation of the revolt and the burning of Sardis, in particular, would become a rallying cry for future expeditions, including Xerxes' own invasion of Greece. In essence, a lot of this shit is just straight up caused because of these goddamn revolts. And its aftermath would be foundational in shaping Xerxes' understanding of the Greeks. This event, coupled with the subsequent confrontation under Darius, would predispose Xerxes towards viewing the Greeks with a mixture of caution, distrust, and desire for retribution. So, in 490 BC, Darius I, seeking retribution for the Athenian and Eritrean support during the Ionian Revolt, initiated the first Persian invasion of Greece. This expedition wasn't just about territorial expansion, but was deeply rooted in avenging perceived insults and restoring Persian prestige. He targeted Eritrea first, and the Persians were very successful, sacking the city and taking a bunch of prisoners. Buoyed by this victory, they then set their sights on Athens, which might have been, in hindsight, kind of a mistake. However, despite the might of the Persian Empire, the expedition met its unexpected climax at the Battle of Marathon, where some asshole ran a bunch, and now there's a bunch of marathons that your friends want to do with you when they're, super fit and healthy for some fucking reason. Goddamn Greeks, fucking a bunch of shit up here for me in the future. I don't like running. God damn it. Y'all decided to win a war by having some guy run and deliver a message in time. Fucking assholes. So, there, the Athenians, greatly outnumbered, yet determined, mounted a tactical surprise and decisively defeated the Persian forces. This loss for the Persians was not just a military setback, it was a blow to the empire's invincibility mythos. Because, again, by this time, they had kicked so much goddamn ass. They destroyed the Medians, they put down a revolt, they had been expanding their empire consistently for, 60, almost 100 years at that point, because no one else could really fuck with them. And And now the Athenians were fucking with them, which really sucked for them. They were like, no, how dare you? Anyways, for the Greeks, however, Marathon became a symbol of resistance, valor, and the capability of free men defending their homeland. Which is, good for them and all. I guess it's cool. You get to keep your democracy and shit. Fuck you, Athens. That's how I want you guys to feel. I want you guys to get this understanding of Persia and their perception, right? So I want you to really see their side of things. So that way, when we'll kind of go over a little bit of the view of the Spartans at the very least towards the end here, but not too intensely. Again, as I feel like you have countless documentaries, countless stories from the Greek side of things. So anyways, in 486 BC, this would mark the death of Darius I, while in the throes of planning a second expedition against Greece. It would send ripples throughout the Achaemenid Empire. Darius wasn't just a ruler, he was an empire builder, an embodiment of Persian might and ambition. His sudden death, with his dream of subduing Greece left incomplete, created a vacuum of both leadership and intent. Darius's death, while originally thought to have been caused by disease and some sickness that made him get a little weak and weary and caused him to die. However, there's been more recent translation again of Persian cuneiform that have surfaced, and allegations of Darius having also been into the art of autoerotic asphyxiation have arisen, like his father before him. So supposedly, one night after a celebration party, Darius decided to indulge in his more carnal desires and had a silk rope and then feathers from the Kentish pulver fetched and gathered to cover himself with. Which, by the way, the Kentish pulver is a small cosmopolitan shorebird. It's about 40 to 44 grams, of the family of the Shardadriadae, that breeds on the shores of the saline lakes, lagoons, and coasts. They populated sand dunes, marshes, and semi-arid desert and tundra, so they're very common in the area during the time. Both male and female birds have pale plumages with a white underside, or gray-brown back as well. They have dark legs and a dark bill. However, additionally, the male birds also exhibit very dark, incomplete breast bands and dark markings on either side of their head. It makes them a little bit more interesting to look at, and also made their feathers a little more desirable to have. Therefore, the Kentish pulver is regarded as sexually dimorphic, which historians would suggest was an indication of Darius's gender dysphoria. Very, very heavily debated whether or not he had it. There's not like a whole lot to go on it, just some, again, unconfirmed writings that could be misconstrued, like it could have been propaganda or something that's being misconstrued or mistranslated. Again, towards thinking about that. But the reason why Darius liked to dress up using the plover in particular, people are guessing might have been either transgender or something else. Anyways, it should be noted the Kentish plover is a tiny bird weighing only 40 grams and measuring 15 to 17 centimeters as a fully grown adult. So you may be asking yourselves, how many of these birds did he have his men kill so he could be covered in those feathers? Which I also asked myself that. And I was like, I need to answer this. So to answer this question, we need to make some assumptions and rough estimations based on available data that we have. So Darius would have had the typical surface area of a fully grown adult male. The average body surface area for an adult male is around 1.9 meters squared, though it can vary depending on the size and build of the individual. But for back then, probably roughly right. It's just, again, this is a guesstimate. The feather coverage of a Kentish plover. Kentish plovers are small waders, right? So, and their body size is roughly similar to that of a sparrow. The exact feather coverage area of a Kentish plover hasn't been quantified in literature, as far as I'm aware of, and I try to look at it. But we can make an educated guess. So if we assume that the feather coverage area of a sparrow-sized bird is about 0.01 meters squared, right? So, or 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, this would be a rough estimation for the Kentish plover as well. Now we're going to calculate the number of Kentish plovers required to cover him. So 1.9 meters squared divided by 0.01 meters squared is equal to about 190 Kentish plovers. So you need the feather coverage of approximately 190 fully grown adult Kentish plovers to cover an adult male. However, remember that is a very rough estimation and based on multiple assumptions, right? So in reality, as an emperor, he may have wanted softer feathers, so he probably used their chicks instead of adults. So Kentish plover chicks are significantly smaller than the adults. So for this estimate, I'll have to make even more assumptions. So, let's get crazy. So let's assume a Kentish plover chick is about 1/3 the size of an adult in terms of its surface area covered by feathers. And again, very rough estimation here, but we're going to assume that, just about 1/3 the size. So given the previous estimate for adults as 0.01, the chicks might provide around 0.0033 meters squared, or 1/3 of that. So 1/3 of the 0.01 meters squared. Now we're going to plug that in to the formula that we just did. So 1.9 meters squared divided by 0.0033 meters squared, or the feather coverage per Kentish plover chick, is 575.76. So rounding up, they would take around 576 Kentish plover chicks to cover an adult male with their feathers, given this assumption. So, after having his men slaughter 576 Kentish plover babies and gathering the finest silk cord, Darius went into his room alone and covered his body in the feathers. He mimicked the Kentish plover mating song, probably to indulge into the fantasy of becoming a baby bird. And just so you guys can hear it, here's some recordings of the Kentish plover. Truly haunting, right? Imagine him just like making that noise, being it kind of sounds like a little machine gun going off. So anyways, Darius then wrapped the silk cord around his neck and furiously masturbated to climax. He supposedly repeated this 6 times that day, and on the 6th excursion, he had attached the rope to something jutting out of one of the columns in his palace. While masturbating, the object reportedly became affixed to the column and would not allow for the release of the silk rope, and so he called for his guards to quickly come and cut off the cord. And as the guards rushed in, young Xerxes would hurry in as well, and he bore witness to the event. His guards would have a difficult time cutting the cord, as it was made of not just silk, but was laced intricately with gold and silver, thus hardening the cord, making it resistant to cuts. So while the guards were struggling to remove the cord, Xerxes' father, Darius, cock in hand, bade him to come to him. Xerxes obeyed his father, and as he approached him, he could see his father's neck muscles tense up. And at first thinking his father had been resisting the rope's pull, but then he saw the pool of semen at his father's feet and realized it was just due to a climax. That's why his neck's tensed up. As Xerxes would draw near, his father in ragged breath told him, "Conquer the Greeks, if it's the last thing you do, my son," seemingly knowing his death was imminent. After a minute or two longer of struggling, and probably coming, Darius would die. Xerxes would attempt afterwards to have every man in that room besides himself killed, or in one way or another, just to hide the shame of his father's death. Luckily, it appears one of them escaped or was able to secretly have the story inscribed onto a tablet before they died. That or, Darius just died of disease and none of that insanity I made up was true. Besides the whole Kentish plover thing, all the math I did and everything for that, completely accurate. I learned a lot about Kentish plovers for no fucking reason other than for this bit. But you never know. The truth could be out there. It could just be a big Persian conspiracy. But they were all jacking it, but, choking themselves. Anyways, enter Xerxes, the eldest son of Darius and Queen Atossa. Direct descendant of Cyrus the Great, his royal lineage was indisputable. So the weight of the crown he was about to wear, and so was the weight of the crown he was about to wear. So, but more than just the mantle of the empire, Xerxes inherited a legacy of intent against Greece. So, yeah. So now we're here where this whole thing begins to completely start. So with the memory of the Persian defeat, Marathon still very fresh, Darius's unfinished business would have felt like a matter of honor for Xerxes. The empire's prestige had been challenged, and Xerxes would have understood that restoring it wasn't just about power, but about upholding the honor and legacy of his ancestors. There's also this burden of expectation that would have been placed on Xerxes. The vast Persian court, with its myriad advisors, generals, and governors, would have looked to Xerxes to fulfill Darius's intent. The murmurs of the court, the anticipation of the military, and the very air of the palace would have constantly reminded Xerxes of the unfinished Greek expedition. People would be like, hey, so when are we going to go finish fucking up the Greeks, man? Like, your dad was doing that. Are you about to go do it? Just a bunch of people constantly coming at him like that, just saying, hey man, hey, let's go fuck up the Greeks. Until eventually he's like, yeah, I gotta go fuck up the Greeks. There's also his own personal resolve. So beyond the external pressures, Xerxes would have had a personal stake in avenging the loss at Marathon. As the new king, demonstrating strength and resolve would be crucial in consolidating his rule. What better way than to succeed where his father had faced some setbacks, right? There's also a strategic imperative, right? So while honor and legacy were undoubtedly significant factors, Xerxes would have also recognized the strategic importance of subduing Greece. As I mentioned earlier, it would be very vital for trade and a whole bunch of other shit. So the Greeks, especially the Athenians, were increasingly seen as a thorn in the side of the empire. Their audacity to resist and even defeat Persian forces made it clear to Xerxes that leaving them unchecked could embolden other regions and challenge the empire's hegemony. So, while ascending to the throne, Xerxes didn't just become the ruler of the Achaemenid Empire. He became the torchbearer of his father's dreams and the empire's aspirations. The unfulfilled expedition against Greece loomed large, right? It was definitely like the elephant in the room whenever he walked into it. So Xerxes would have felt both the weight of responsibility and the fire of ambition to finish what Darius had begun. So we get to 484 BC, just a little bit before he launches his shit against Greece. I think he just wanted to test some shit out. So in 484 BC, as a young Xerxes grappled with the demands of an expansive empire, the flames of rebellion threatened to engulf one of its prized territories, Egypt. The Egyptians, having tasted the freedom of autonomy in the past, were not easily subjugated. This rebellion wasn't just a regional disturbance, but a direct challenge to the very foundation of the Achaemenid Empire's authority. However, Xerxes, with the fire of youth and the determination of a newly anointed ruler, responded with an iron fist, crushing the Egyptian revolt. It wasn't just a strategic move. It was a clear statement of intent. The swift and decisive action sent a ripple throughout the empire. So because of this, we can see this almost like assertion of power, right? So by successfully suppressing the Egyptian revolt, Xerxes showcased his ability to manage and wield the vast military machine that was the Persian army. This was a testament to his leadership and fortifying his position amongst the Persian elite and regional governors. They're like, so this is the reason why this guy's emperor right here. He was bred to do this. Okay. He's also to maintain the balance of power. The empire was overall this very complex web of diverse cultures and territories. The successful subjugation of the Egyptian revolt was a stark message to other provinces. Rebellion would not be tolerated. And there was a psychological impact as well. The conquest had a psychological dimension. Xerxes' victory would have emboldened him, furthering his belief in the divine right and destiny of the Persians to rule over foreign lands. It would have also fueled his confidence in the upcoming expedition against Greece. Again, this is where we kind of get into this whole god king idea, right? So where he kind of is like, I'm a god king. Because of like him doing this, like immediately whipping out his big dick to the Egyptians made him feel, like a strong man. Most importantly, though, there's a lot of lessons in leadership that he learned during this revolt. So while the suppression showcased Xerxes might also likely taught him the delicate art of ruling over diverse cultures and the need to balance force with diplomacy to integrate rather than merely dominate. Would have been lessons he carried forward. So this overall very successful quelling of the Egyptian revolt was more than a military victory for Xerxes. It was a crucible, molding him into a formidable ruler who reaffirming his belief in the Persian Empire's might and strengthening his resolve to bring even the fiercely independent Greeks under Persian dominion. Really set himself up to like feel real good because, after losing the Battle of Marathon, there was a bit of a, not really like a downturn, because again, most of Persia just viewed it as like a minor setback, right? It was one battle. They could eventually launch another invasion and probably win. That was everybody's confident, and everybody was wholeheartedly believing in that reality. So, in 483 BC, the Persian Empire's machinery of war was not something to be mobilized lightly. Yet just 1 year after quashing the Egyptian revolt, Xerxes set this enormous apparatus into motion, directing it towards one distinct target, Greece. But this wasn't a whimsical campaign spurred by the ambitions of a young king. It was a calculated endeavor with a bunch of layers in a tent meeting. So again, he had that whole shadow of Darius over him. Marathon was not just that footnote, but a stain on the empire's legacy. So by launching this invasion, he was attempting to fulfill a duty that he felt like he had to, striving to succeed where his father had met resistance. Doing this also solidified his leadership. The early years of his reign saw him navigate revolts and consolidate a bunch of power. So a victorious campaign against Greece would not only assert his dominance over external adversaries, but would further cement his position internally. With the empire's vast territories and diverse populations, a resounding victory would deter potential rebellions and reaffirm loyalty among his subjects. So by winning this war, he could essentially prevent more wars from happening, was kind of like the mindset, right? That way, he's not going to have all these territories try to come at him and like revolt against him if he could subdue the Greeks completely. So while the Greeks were undoubtedly a military target, there was a symbolic angle to the invasion overall. The Greeks, with their independent city-states, democratic ideals, and distinct culture, represented a way of life vastly different from the Persian monarch structure. Conquering them wasn't just about the territorial acquisition, but showcasing the superiority of the Persian way and his divine mandate to rule, right? Because they're like, no, this is how we rule. We do it this way. We don't let commoners decide who is in charge. Weirdos. And there's the economic interest as well. So Greece, especially Athens, with its growing naval strength, posed a threat to Persian maritime interests, and dominance over the Aegean Sea and securing the trade routes would bolster the empire's economic might. Additionally, the mineral-rich regions of Greece were tantalizing prospects for the empire's coffers. Right, the very like I want to get my hands on that. And then there, again, very strategic foothold, right? So control over Greece would provide Persia with a strategic advantage in the Western front, serving as a buffer against any further Western threats and as a launchpad for potential expansions into the broader European mainland. So they would have, again, more than likely gone against Italy and other territories that in Europe at the time that were beginning to form. They would have been bigger than any empire ever in history had they won here. So as Xerxes marshaled his resources, troops, and strategists, it became evident that this just wasn't another military campaign. It was an assertion of personal and national identity, a statement of intent, and a strategic masterstroke at the grand chessboard of ancient geopolitics. So really, yeah, Xerxes wasn't just trying to be a dick here, trying to be like, democracy sucks. Really, what he was trying to do, he was trying to really just assert Achaemenid dominance and get the empire to be viewed as this unbeatable thing, right? That no one should really try to go against. So in 482 BC, if there was one thing the vast tapestry of the Persian Empire had in abundance, it was dynamic medley of cultures, territories, and histories. Babylon, an ancient city with its rich legacy, was no exception. Revered for its contributions to civilization, from the Hanging Gardens to the Code of Hammurabi, Babylon was not just another province, and the empire was a symbol of Mesopotamian greatness. But symbols, especially those that resonate with power and pride, can often become focal points of resistance. Thus, when the murmurs of discontent grew into an uproarious revolt in Babylon, it wasn't just a local affair. It was a profound challenge to Persian supremacy. Xerxes, who by this point had already displayed his flair for decisive action in Egypt, responded with characteristic force. There was swift retaliation against them. Xerxes did not allow this revolt to fester. If he had lost Babylon, it would have been... He understood the symbolic and strategic importance of Babylon. So he acted very quickly. He deployed troops to quash that rebellion as fast as he could. And realizing that maybe his grandfather and his father's way of rule, of diplomacy, might have been too lenient, he decided to, in this response, display a show of strength. So it showcased his military prowess. It also served a dual purpose. He ruthlessly suppressed this revolt. He sent a very clear message to other territories within the empire. Defiance would be met with overwhelming force. It completely reinforced his control. So following the suppression of the revolt, it is believed that Xerxes took measures to reduce Babylon's stature, including removing certain privileges, which not only weakened the city's autonomy, but also served as a deterrent to future insurrections. He was not having that shit happen again, especially while he was trying to go fuck up Greece. It's like, it's not going down. And then there is, because of the way he treated Babylon, he got this ruthless reputation, right? So while the swift action secured the empire's territorial integrity, it came at the cost. Tales of Xerxes' brutal suppression spread, painting him as an effective yet merciless ruler. In the ground halls of power, this might have been seen as strength, but among the common people in conquered territories, it sowed seeds of fear and resentment. Because think about it. This entire time, Darius and then before him Cyrus had shown leniency, tolerance, and wanted to integrate rather than just suppress. But Xerxes, again, because these revolts were happening at such a critical moment, was probably stressed out, probably wasn't getting his dick sucked enough, and decided to just beat the shit out of them. Because he was tired. He was tired of these people revolting. He viewed all these people who were revolting as disloyal and kind of spitting on the faces of what his ancestors had done for them in the past. So the Babylonian revolt and its aftermath were pivotal in shaping perceptions about Xerxes. While his allies in the Persian nobility might have seen a leader who was willing to do whatever it took to preserve the empire's glory, his adversaries, including the Greeks, viewed him as a ruthless despot, further fanning the flames of resistance in the years to come. Okay, so in the early months of 480 BC, as the first light of dawn spread over the city of Sardis, an aura of anticipation permeated the air, right? Persian Empire, known for its grandeur and vastness, was about to embark on a military campaign that would underscore its indomitable spirit and unparalleled ambition. Xerxes, at the helm, was leading this colossal charge against Greece. So even for Persia, with its storied history of grand campaigns, the scale of this expedition was unprecedented. The assembly of troops from every corner of the empire showcased its vast diversity and might. Estimates vary, but some ancient sources hint at hundreds of thousands, if not more, marching under the imperial banner, which is insane to think about. Not only this, but as the march progressed, Xerxes and his army reached the Hellespont, which was a very narrow strait separating Asia from Europe. So instead of navigating the tricky waters, Xerxes sought to showcase Persian engineering prowess. He ordered the construction of 2 parallel bridges made of pontoon boats. Despite an initial setback with a storm destroying the bridges, they were quickly rebuilt under the threat of Xerxes' wrath. Which, again, so you have to realize this campaign and this battle for Persia wasn't just like go conquer some territories and take over, right? This was a showcase of the empire itself to the world. He knew that by doing this was going to get to a bunch of other areas that they hadn't conquered, and a bunch of other kingdoms that may eventually try and threaten them. By showcasing this strength, he was essentially setting it up so people would fear the might of Persia and the Achaemenid Empire and not ever fuck with them. Okay. There's also this symbolism of the bridge. So more than just a passage for his army, the bridge stood as a symbol for Xerxes' ambition. By bridging the divide between Asia and Europe, he was not only defying nature, but also proclaiming the reach and unity of the Persian Empire. It was as if he was stitching together 2 continents under Persian dominion. This was, again, also a message to Greece and the world. So as the Persian forces marched over the bridge, sent a clear message to the Greeks and the broader world. The Persians weren't merely an invading force. They were an unstoppable wave of cultural, military, and engineering might. Greece wasn't facing a mere army. They were up against the consolidated strength of the largest empire the world had ever seen. While the march from Sardis and the bridging of the Hellespont were feats of logistical and engineering genius, they also foreshadowed challenges to come. The very nature and scale of the expedition, while showcasing Persian strengths, also hinted at its vulnerabilities, especially when fighting the unique terrain and tactics of Greece. And now that I've talked about the Hellespont, right, we need to kind of get into this part of the tale. So there's this tale that's told about Xerxes' supposed frustration with the sea, particularly the Greek god of it, Poseidon, right? So while trying to construct the Hellespont, his ships would be routinely sunk and destroyed by the currents and waves bashing them against the rocks. He supposedly had gotten so mad that he had his men whip the sea. Now, this may have been Greek propaganda, but there are records from nobles traveling with him at the time that state it happened, and some may indicate that Xerxes had gone into a very pseudo-primitive version of BDSM and role-playing, which may have occurred due to the traumatic experience he had right before assuming the throne, bearing witness to his father's grotesque Kenjish Plover come death, So due to this traumatic experience, Xerxes may have developed a trauma kink response. Instead of following his father and his grandfather's legacy of autoerotic asphyxiation, however, he felt inclined to punish himself and others, which is why many viewed him as brutal. This, in all reality, was just a way for him to vent out his newly found sadomasochistic desires, due to being unable to control how his father died. So he felt if he was able to control and punish those he deemed necessary, as it would alleviate him of his grief, over time this turned into more of a sexual desire for dominating perceived gods, i.e. the instance in Babylon where Xerxes is ruthless and slaughters many and destroys the temples to their gods, right? So, which in a way is just him subjecting the god to his control, and by controlling their believers and destroying their temples and domains, right? So it's just control in the bedroom for him, kind of. It really is just an elevated form of sexual dominance over an object or person. So when he was angry that his ships kept breaking apart during the bridge's construction, Xerxes viewed it as the god Poseidon being what is now described as a brat, quote unquote, in BDSM culture. Which, if you don't know what that is, I went ahead and found an article that kind of describes it, right? So a brat is described by this article that I found on Mashable.com. The article says, "Make me." This is the trademark saying for a brat. For brats, a brat is the delightfully disobedient sub within the dynamic in BDSM. Brats enjoy questioning dominance as well as like for dominance to be kind of like forced on them, says Emerson Karsh, or a kink educator. Why would you want to be a brat during sex? Why wouldn't you? Being cheeky, disobedient, and naughty is fun. It creates a sense of playfulness that is often missing in sex. Being a brat is a very fun way to engage with your submissive side without being a stereotypical sub. Brats are mouthy, they disbehave and are keen on being punished. So in BDSM, not all submissions look the same. Playing with power dynamics gets very creative in this world. So brats get great enjoyment from playing a game of cat and mouse, defying authority, and in turn, receiving a punishment from their brat tamer, explains Giulietta Chiaramonte, a kink kink researcher and sex expert. So yeah, that's what a brat is. So Xerxes, being a dominant, would have more than likely viewed the breaking of his ships as being cheeky or playful, as thousands of his men would drown in the sea, right? So it's very cheeky and playful of Poseidon. So seeing this, Xerxes would showcase how he was able to dominate anything, and that he was in fact the boss, and figured it was time to get the paddle / whips out to make this brat, Poseidon, understand that he was in charge. He was daddy. He had 3 300 of his men get out and whip the fuck out of the sea. And then he was able to complete the construction of the Hellespont and come all over his cabin and the ship. I'm pretty sure. In the annals of history, the early months of 480 BC weren't just about the movement of troops. They were about the movement of an empire's ambition, an emperor's vision, and the inevitable clash of cultures, strategies, and destinies, and coming all over a Greek god of sea. So in 480 BC, in August, the Battle of Thermopylae takes place. We are finally here, guys. You made it. You made it here. You now have a almost full understanding of where Xerxes is coming from and understanding of the Persian view. At least I hope by this point, right? The Battle of Thermopylae stands as one of the most legendary clashes in the annals of military history. The famous narrow pass, or the Hot Gates in Greek, would witness a fierce struggle between the monumental might of the Persian Empire and the unwavering determination of a small Greek force. Really, like in the prelude to this battle, Xerxes definitely anticipated a swift campaign in Greece. The sheer scale of his army was meant not just to win battles, but to overawe the Greeks and encourage swift surrenders. He wanted them just to surrender as quickly as possible. So as the Persian force approached Thermopylae, Xerxes might have expected the Greeks to flee or submit in the face of such overwhelming odds. We're talking like he potentially honestly almost had 1 million people in his camp as he was traveling, which is insane. The Greek defense and Persian expectations, right? So Leonidas and his Spartans, supported by other Greek allies, occupied the narrow pass. Understanding its strategic significance, the terrain effectively neutralized the Persians' numerical advantage. For Xerxes, who had seen numerous city-states open their gates to him without a fight, this determined resistance might have come as a surprise for him. He probably would have been like, "What? Wait, they said no? They didn't want to just surrender? What?" He's probably, "Are they fucking crazy? Okay, I guess we're gonna have this fight then." And so the battle unfolds. And for 3 days, the Greeks, leveraging the narrowness of this pass, managed to inflict heavy casualties on the Persians while suffering very few losses themselves. The very famous phalanx formation of the Spartans, along with their superior equipment and training, made every Greek warrior a formidable opponent for the Persian infantry. They were not prepared for them. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Persian perceptions and casualties at this, right? So Herodotus, the Greek historian, is one of the primary sources for the battle, and he provides numbers that are often debated by historians. He claimed the Persians lost around 20,000 men, while the Greeks lost about 2,000 to 4,000. These numbers are contentious and likely inflated, especially the Persian casualties. Still, it's widely accepted that the Persians suffered heavy losses before managing to outflank the Greeks. The Persians likely perceived the resistance as a mix of admiration and frustration. On one hand, the prowess and courage of the Greek defenders would be undeniable even to a Persian observer, right? However, on the other hand, Xerxes, who watched the battle from a throne set up nearby, must have felt frustration seeing his grand army being held back by such a small force. He's like, "Why the fuck are we not getting through, guys? Get through! We have so many people. How can none of you get through this? God damn it." Probably just got like super pissed at his men and was like, "Come on. Come on. We have like 1 million people here. They have like 300. So, but again, it's just this terrain that Greece had set up, especially for Sparta, was very tricky to navigate. However, the battle's tide would turn when a local resident, Ephilates, informed the Persians of a mountain path that led behind the Greek lines. So the Greeks were outflanked at this point, and the majority of the Greek force retreated. Leonidas, with his 300 Spartans and a few hundred other Greeks, made their last stand, fighting to the death. Now, it is from here, on the Persian side, that we get an interesting tale about this, right? So from the Persian side, the story says, as the Battle of Thermopylae raged on, a singular arrow, seemingly out of nowhere, brought down King Leonidas, the heart and the soul of Spartan defenses. At this point in time, Xerxes did not actually want Leonidas dead. He actually really respected him and his leadership. I still kind of wanted to try and like manipulate him, but when this happened and like the defiance of Leonidas, Xerxes still was kind of like, like why are you doing this? And he ended up demanding to know who had fired the shot that ended the legendary Spartan's life. There was a nervous Persian archer named Artax who, with an uncanny resemblance and demeanor to the aforementioned Tarchon, he stepped forward and he's like, "My king, it was never my intention to end the Spartan king's life in that manner." But when pressed for explanation, Artax, blushing a shade of deep crimson, admitted that his ass itched. And as he was going to scratch his fingers, he forgot he had notched an arrow, and the arrow just kind of got loose and killed Leonidas. So, it was just an accident. That or, just Xerxes commanded a bunch of archers to fucking fire at him and try and kill him as fast as possible and didn't do that. But who knows? Maybe another itchy ass killed another legendary leader. Itchy asses are known for many accidents in history. So it's something we need to always be wary about. Just make sure your ass isn't itchy and you might not kill an important military or political figure in your lifetime. So the eventual Persian victory was Pyrrhic, right? While they did proceed to sack and burn the evacuated city of Plataea and then Athens, the heavy losses at Thermopylae and the subsequent naval defeat at Salamis later in 480 BC weakened the invasion's momentum. Xerxes' ambition of a swift victory was met with a reality of stubborn resistance and unexpected setbacks. The Battle of Thermopylae for the Persians and Xerxes was a lesson in the unpredictability of war. It demonstrated that sheer numbers didn't guarantee swift victory, and that determination, strategy, and terrain could level the playing field easily. It also set the stage for continued Greek resistance and the eventual repulsion of the Persian invasion. It is worth noting that most of the detailed accounts of the battle come from Greek sources, so exact numbers and specific perceptions of the Persian side are harder to ascertain. However, it's evident that Thermopylae, even for the Persians, was more than just a military engagement. It was a clash of strategies, wills, and cultures. Okay, now that we went over this for the Greek side, let's quickly go over now that we went over the Persian side, let's quickly go over the Greek side. So, the Greek and overall Western portrayal of this battle, right? So for the Greeks, Thermopylae was a symbol of heroism and sacrifice. The stoic stand of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans has been immortalized in art, literature, and modern pop culture. They were painted as the ultimate underdogs. And like in all reality, they fucking were. We're talking nearly 1 million men for sure got there, and they had the biggest balls on earth, obviously, at the time. A small force defending their homeland against an immeasurable foreign invader. It'd be like us versus aliens now, right? Like, imagine if like 300 people here on Earth went against like hundreds of thousands of aliens with who knows what for strategy. But they don't know Earth and you know Earth, so you're able to whip their ass and with sheer strategy. It's crazy. Right, so okay. The story has been passed down through the ages, getting amplified in its retelling. While the Greeks were outnumbered, some depictions exaggerate the disparity to proportions. For example, the 300 versus 1 million, right? So for Greek sources, especially from Athens, they also emphasize the contrast between the quote-unquote free men of Greece defending their homelands and the quote-unquote slaves of the Persian Empire. This theme fed into the broader narrative of democracy, especially Athenian democracy versus Eastern despotism. But in all reality, that simply wasn't the case, right? The Persians had this very large empire that they were able to pull from, and that's what Xerxes did. He didn't have slaves go out there and kill him. He had his subjects go and fight for him. They joined the military. Maybe some of them didn't want to be there, but it was part of like their laws at the time. And again, most of their governors or provinces did experience a great degree of autonomy and were allowed to self-govern and self-rule. And for the most part, a lot of them were happy. Xerxes at the time was being an asshole, yes, But they weren't slaves. That was just something the Greeks made up and invented. There's also a bunch of religious undertones. The Greeks saw their resistance as not only against the Persians, but also against impiety. Xerxes' alleged whipping of the Hellespont and his eventual burning of Athens' temples were seen as acts against the gods. And for many Greeks, the victory in the subsequent battles was divine justice. It was the Greek gods whipping Xerxes' ass. So the overall impact on Persia and Greece, right? So in Persia, in the short term, the Battle of Thermopylae, despite being a victory, was a morale dampener, definitely losing way more men than the Greeks did in that battle. The larger campaign, with the naval defeat at Salamis and later at Plataea on land, signaled the end of the Persian expansion into Greece. The wars with Greece also showcased some of the administrative and logistical challenges of running such a vast empire. It highlighted the issues with long supply lines and the difficulty in maintaining control over distant provinces. For Greece, the Greco-Persian Wars, including Thermopylae, galvanized the city-states, leading to a brief period of unity, especially evident in the formation of the Delian League, which eventually Alexander the Great would come out of, and the Macedonians would come out of. So the wars also sowed the seeds for Athens' rise as an imperial power, which would eventually lead to tensions with Sparta and the Peloponnesian War, which is, that's kind of cool to see how like all this impacted future events, right? The Greek victory against the Persian Empire gave them tremendous confidence boost, paving the way for the classical age, an era of tremendous achievements in art, philosophy, and science. So now let's take a look and see what it's done for the modern days. So Thermopylae remains a symbol of resistance against overwhelming odds. That's kind of its main symbolic, what it's a symbol of. Leonidas and his Spartans are invoked in various contexts, whenever a small group faces a much larger force. The battle has also been adapted into various media, most famously in the graphic novel 300 by Frank Miller, and its subsequent film adaptation. These modern portrayals, while not always historically accurate, emphasize themes of freedom, sacrifice, and honor, which is, really cool. And then there's a lot of political implications. So, right, the narrative of a democratic West versus a despotic East is rooted in part in battles like Thermopylae. This has had a lasting legacy, has influenced, for better or worse, I would argue worse mainly, Western perceptions of the East for millennia. So in conclusion, the Battle of Thermopylae as a historical event was a pivotal moment in the Greco-Persian Wars, but its legacy, shaped by centuries of retelling and reinterpretation, has turned into a legend that transcends its actual strategic and tactical implications. And with that brings us to the end of the battle, and really the end of like the main chunk of the show. So we're going to get into thoughts and takeaways after this, if you're new, where I'm going to talk to you about my overall thoughts. I mean, a lot of this is kind of like an opinion piece anyways, but you know what I'm saying. So let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so my main thoughts after doing all this research made me realize a couple things, right? So number one would definitely be the Western portrayal of the East. It is a very long-standing theme in Western literature and history, or this kind of like this concept of Oriental or Eastern other that has been prevalent since antiquity. I think it's very rooted in a combination of genuine cultural differences and misunderstandings, and sometimes very deliberate political portrayals, right? Because if you can get your people to believe these Easterners are super weird and so different from you that, they're barely even like a person, it's easier to convince them to go kill them, in my opinion. I think that's why it's done so much, which is really sad, because they're people like us. They just have different perspectives and ideals. It gets a lot more complex in the modern era, where we've had colonialism and a whole bunch of global politics happen over time. So like even now there's still this idea of like other Western or Easterner, right? Especially with the Middle East. Here in the US, they're viewed as the other or very different from us, which is sad because, again, they're very similar in a lot of ways. They just have these very stark cultural differences because of how they've, how their ancestors lived and how they've lived for their entire lives. So, okay, and then number 2 would be the Achaemenid Empire's reputation. So it's a very vast and diverse, right? So, and by many accounts, it practices a relatively tolerant and inclusive form of rule, especially for its time. Like, really, for its time, it did. I can't think of like any other empire that truly had the amount of respect and tolerance that it had for its conquered territories, like the Persian Empire did. I really think that a lot of the negative reputation was a political game on Greece's side and really like for future leaders' side to get them to view the East or people from there as these despotic rulers, ruthless assholes who didn't care about personal freedoms. In all reality, they did. And then my other kind of thought about this too overall was how Xerxes definitely inherited a very complex legacy, right? His grandpa was this badass who essentially set up the Achaemenid Empire to be this huge thing. And then his dad was this badass who kept expanding the empire. And with the setback in Greece, with his dad, right, with Darius, Xerxes definitely had this very personal and political motive to reassert the Persian dominance there, which I just kind of found that piece to be a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to think about, and why I kind of had like this focus on him and how the Persians definitely perceived the Greeks during this time. And then 4th would definitely be the Greek military strategy, right? Particularly the Spartans were very well trained and used to fighting defensive battles, and how they just understood their own area and their terrain and just able to utilize it so effectively, like the narrow pass at Thermopylae. It's just insane to think about, and how, I don't know, I feel like if I were in their shoes and I had that overwhelming force against me, I would definitely try to maneuver it diplomatically first, as opposed to an all-out war and try to win based off of strategy. Just because the numbers, I think, at least for me, would definitely kind of freak me out as a leader. If I had to be worried about how my people were going to be treated, I'd much rather, try and see what sort of, autonomy they'd give me, what would go on. But, it definitely would have gone against, it's odd. For Spartans, it wouldn't have gone against them as much as it would have for Athens, right? Because the Spartans had that dual king system set up. So I viewed the whole diplomatic view as like almost like a failure on their part, because I definitely think they could have worked something out with the Persians, but they just didn't want to, which is respectable. And they were a warrior people, so that's just kind of how that goes. But overall, their strategy and the way that they effectively used everything, insane, super cool. They were definitely able to make numbers mean shit in the long term, kind of almost like a pseudo guerrilla warfare style of battle, but not guerrilla because like they're not like ambushing and like sneaking in and out, more or less just effectively controlling an area and using that to their advantage, which in guerrilla warfare, that's sometimes what you do is you take an area where you can maneuver about easily and get in and out as quick as possible. I guess for them, they didn't necessarily want to get out, but they took an area and they used it to their advantage. So then we have the Persian persistence at Thermopylae, right? Which this is where I get a little hung up with the Persians, with their side. After day 2, with the amount of losses that they experienced, I am thinking now maybe, I'm trying to understand their side, right? Because they viewed it at the losses as almost insignificant to their overall army. However, I think really, even after day one, after losing a shit ton of men, they should have realized, okay, they have a very strong focal point here. I'm not going to be able to just brute force my way over them and push through. I think there's a sense of pride and honor that Xerxes felt. There's this underestimation as well. There's also very strategic importance of getting Thermopylae. I don't know. I think I personally would have just moved on or stopped fighting and try to trick them somehow, I guess, like kind of feint them out. There's also a bunch of logistics, I guess, with doing that. Kind of redirecting a massive force on the fly would have been a little too costly too, but it was still costly either way. In hindsight, it makes sense, right, to fuck off about it, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But I don't know. Those kind of like my thoughts. What are you guys' thoughts on this? What are some of your takeaways from it? Did you learn more about Kentish plovers than you ever wanted to learn in your life? I know I did. I love it. Birds are cool, man. So if you like this show, give it a like, give it a follow. Share it with some friends, share the quarrels, share war. It's important to have a good understanding of history and of war and of how important it is, in my opinion. So if you have friends and family that you think would enjoy this and would have fun, kind of meandering through some of the crazier parts that I do. I know the shit that I come up with is a little crazy, off color. But if you have people that really like that or enjoy that and also like history and they like war, this show is definitely for them. So share it with them. If you don't know anyone like that, leave a review. Just, just tell me how I'm doing. Tell me what I can do better. You can leave a review telling me that it sucks and then tell me why it sucks. Don't just say it sucks, dude. I'd like to know why personally, just so I can do a little better for you or future listeners. And then reach out to me. Reach out to me through the Historical Quarrels Gmail. So it's just historicalquarrels@gmail.com. If you don't know how to spell quarrels, just Google Historical Quarrels and my podcast is like the first thing that pops up. So then just copy paste that name, get rid of the space, and then put @gmail.com. Very simple. Follow us on our socials, like on Instagram, Facebook, I guess X, or whatever the hell Twitter is now. I don't know. Don't want to dead name something, but I'm gonna dead name it because I don't know what the hell it is, Elon. And then I don't know. Just I guess like I don't know, just do something with it. You can remix this, turn it into a song. I don't know. I just want to talk to you guys. I want to get to know who my listeners are, get to know you guys better. If you don't want me to, that's fine. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a parasocial relationship, which I get people are against, but I don't know, to a degree, just kind of getting to know you. I feel like I don't know, because it's weird. It's a weird, complex, tricky thing. But if you feel comfortable with reaching out to me, I'm comfortable with you guys reaching out to me. If not, totally understand. I'll respect that. Don't care. But if you don't care, then just, talk to me. I don't mind it. I'm not gonna be weird about it. I'm not gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing talking to me, you weirdo? Guys, love you all. You all have a good one. Share the quarrels. Share it all. Quarrel with some of your neighbors. Send me some story. Here's a challenge. If you don't know what to say to me or talk to me about, start a quarrel with someone just randomly. Debate them for no absolute reason, and then send me that story, and I'll read it out loud on my next episode or something. I'll do that. So you guys have a good one. Bye bye.